So we welcome our good friends, Senator Murkowski and Senator King. Both of you have been on this stage before, but we greatly appreciate that you have found time in this hectic schedule in Washington to engage live with the audience here. But as a courtesy, we want to invite you, if you want to say a few remarks at the very beginning, and then we will take questions from the audience. So, Senator Murkowski, you want to go first?
But thank you, President Grimson, and thank you for once again convening this significant Arctic event. It is important that so many are gathered there, and it is unfortunate that you do not have representation from the United States right now as a consequence of this government shutdown. This is now day 16. You can imagine the disruption in government operations when things are shut down this way. It is not only the functionings of government, but our inability to continue on with a good part of our job. As disruptive as a government shutdown is, I am dealing with a major human evacuation as a consequence of flooding due to Typhoon Halong that came out of Japan, brought devastation to the western coast of Alaska. Hundreds of homes came off their foundation, floating in the water. Three perished in this storm. Over 1,000 have been displaced and are in the midst, as we speak, of evacuating over 500 miles away into temporary locations just as winter is coming on. We're no stranger to storms in Alaska, but this was an unusual track, and then combined with warmer water in the northern Pacific, it combined to make it even worse. So the immediate focus is on helping those who are in need, who are impacted, but we also recognize this is what happens when climate change worsens, and that's what we're seeing. To me, shutdowns and the storms all highlight the significance of resilience. We have to be more resilient in the face of global events, politics, as well as climate. Our Arctic region demands it, as do all the people who live there. So just very briefly here, with a focus on resilience as a renewed priority, just to briefly outline where I think the United States should be focusing when it comes to the Arctic and resilience. First is on modern infrastructure, everything from housing to ports to energy to broadband, that can withstand some of these regional extremes while still serving the communities and the strategic needs. We also need new military and defense investments that provide for the presence, for the recovery, and the sovereignty missions. We need opportunities for economic development, whether it is responsible resource production, but also addressing environmental threats and sustainability. And of course, strengthening diplomacy, including, and importantly, a U.S. ambassador for Arctic affairs who will bring the level of consistency and focus on building relations. And then finally, greater cooperation with our Arctic allies, because security and stewardship are our collective endeavors. And President Grimson, you mentioned the recent news with the U.S. and Finland reaching a strategic agreement on icebreakers. The United States will purchase up to 4 Arctic security cutters from Finnish shipyards, and then working to build more domestically. But I think it demonstrates the strength of our partnerships and will ultimately expand all of our capabilities. So it's a model, I think, of how we can move forward on our shared Arctic priorities. I'm looking forward to the conversations here with so many who are there at Arctic Circle. Thank you so much.
Senator King.
President Grimson, or should I say, I guess it's Chairman Grimson, but thank you for the invitation. And this conference gets more important every year. Every year that goes by, the Arctic increases in its significance in terms of resources, in terms of transit, in terms of, unfortunately, military affairs, national security of the Arctic nations. So I commend all of you for being there, for discussing, for listening to one another. In fact, you see President Lincoln over my shoulder here. He once said, he was asked what he would do if he was given an hour to split a cord of wood. And his answer was very profound. He said, I'd spend the first 15 minutes sharpening my axe. And that's what you're doing at this conference. You're thinking and talking and sharing ideas and perspectives. And that's what's so important. That's the preparation for doing, for getting about the business of the Arctic and its significance. I think it's important to put this all in perspective. The Arctic Ocean has been inaccessible in terms of the water for all of human history. And what we are living through right now is the equivalent of the discovery of the Mediterranean Sea. And it is a extraordinary moment in world history. And what we want to avoid is it took 1,000 years or so of wars to settle the peaceful livings around the Mediterranean Sea. We don't want to go through that. And we are very focused upon trying to work together to move forward. Now, one of the problems, of course, was that the Arctic Council was performing this kind of peaceful coexistence function along with Russia until the unprovoked invasion of Ukraine. And that forum has largely atrophied is perhaps too strong a word, but it's certainly diminished because of the Russian lack of participation. But it's something that we have to be focused upon in order to have a peaceful development of this incredibly important region in world geography. Whether it's energy development, as I mentioned, transit, the economies of the indigenous peoples that surround this body of water, but also the military aspect. I looked at a map recently of military facilities around the Arctic Ocean. There are now 25 Russian bases, either air bases or naval bases on the Russian side of the Arctic. That presents a challenge to the West. And of course, it's something that we have to take into consideration. So I want to commend you and the organizers of the Circle for convening this group. And believe me, Lisa Murkowski and I would rather be there than waiting out the efforts to end this government shutdown here in the U.S. We've been commiserating with each other all week about not being able to come to Iceland, one of our favorite places. So again, thank you for putting this all together. Look forward to discussing some of these issues with your participants.
Well, we have a great sympathy with you having been stuck in Washington, but we have a crowded hall here of people eager to listen to what you have to say and put their questions. So let us have the light up, and if there's a question there at the back, please be quick, because we have to run this like a speed train. Yes. And introduce yourself.
Hello, my name is Sophia. I'm a graduate student from the Fletcher School at Tufts University. My question is for Senator Murkowski. I'm wondering, as the chair of the Senate Indian Affairs Committee and as a rep from a state with high numbers of Native Americans, are you worried about cuts to tribal programs or bureaus that work towards the protection of indigenous communities, given the speculation about the possibility of thousands of layoffs throughout the federal government during the shutdown?
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah. Okay.
Absolutely worried and concerned and weighing in with the administration. And this was well before the shutdown. You may know that very early on in the administration, there was an executive order that went out directed towards DEI initiatives. And it was important to very clearly and very early state that when we're talking about indigenous peoples, this is not a DEI initiative. This is a respect for for our native peoples with regard for their sovereignty and their own self-determination. So what I am watching right now is what we're seeing with these cuts, furloughs that are being announced. I think we have been relatively successful in making sure that within the IHS, the Indian Health Service, we haven't seen the reduction in forces that we have in other areas. But it's not just IHS that provides for programs for our indigenous peoples around the country. It is in just about every other agency and account. So we are being aggressive in staying on this. In fact, just this morning, we're engaging on some education programs that have just recently been announced for not only cuts but elimination that will have impact not only on Alaska Natives, Native Hawaiians, but others around the country. So this is not a stable time for our indigenous peoples, just as it is not stable for our federal workforce.
Let's take the question there. Yes.
Hi.
Yeah.
My name's Nettie LaBelle-Hamer, and I'm from the University of Alaska Fairbanks. And I want to just say, first of all, Lisa, we're really sad that you're not here. You're an important part of this conversation always. But I did want to address this opportunity of talking to both of these senators together, because I feel that Senator King and Senator Murkowski have been very important in the Arctic conversations and how we move forward. One of the things that came up last night in conversations and then today in the panel that was the concept of the Artemis Accords, where the Artemis Accords are talking about how we use principles to go forward into space, and the parallel was drawn for bringing those same principles into moving forward in the Arctic. And I wanted to see if that was something that the two of you would be willing to work on.
So let me jump in on
Go
that.
ahead, Angus. Yeah.
I think the short answer is yes. And as I mentioned, we have an extraordinary challenge and opportunity to deal with this, with the development of the Arctic in a principled, systematic and non-military way. That's not usually the way world history works, but this is an exceptional opportunity, and I think developing a set of mutually agreed upon principles, not unlike the UN Law of the Sea Treaty, which, by the way, the U.S. should ratify, but developing a set of principles that are agreed to by all nations, but particularly all Arctic nations, I think is exactly the place to start. And then we can try to put in the political and economic and military arrangements in conformance with those principles. So I think the discussion was exactly the right discussion.
And if I may just follow on that, Nettie, I think when you think about what these principles are, it's peaceful purpose, it's transparency, it is the interoperability that comes with all of this, and so solid foundations for us for discussion. You know, it's interesting when I hear the comparison of space and Arctic. We recognize that for so many around the world, Arctic is this new frontier. It's totally undiscovered, and yet it has been the home to indigenous peoples for thousands and thousands of years. So as we explore these new frontiers, we have to recognize the contributions and the lived experiences of those who have called this place home for centuries.
Good. Okay. So yes, there's a question there.
Yeah, I'm still on.
No, here.
Hi. Sorry, my name. Is this on?
Oh, okay. Then Gray afterwards. Yes. Let's take these two questions.
I'm Emma. I'm at the University of Iceland, but I'm from Maine, so good to see you, Senator King. And I just wanted to see what the U.S. is working on to counter Russia's growing nuclear presence in the Arctic.
Can we also take the question from... Okay, let's take these three, and then Gray here.
Okay.
Keep your hands up so we can see, yes.
I'm Rob Hubert, University of Calgary, and it follows on the last question. A theme's developing in the discussion that this geopolitics is relatively new, if not brand new, and yet every single variable that everyone's bringing forward to what's causing it, the development of the expansion of the nuclear capabilities, the delivery systems, those are all way pre-2014. The invasion of Russia, when I was checking, occurs in 2014. The cyber attacks on Western states are 2016. What has this cost us that we are pretending that this narrative of the new geopolitics has only started since 2022 when all the evidence seems to point that it was 2014, 2012, and we refuse to accept it? So why is that, and what has that cost us ultimately in being able to respond to the threat?
Okay, we'll take one more question here, yes, and then we turn back to the screen, yes.
Can I?
No, sorry, I was going to take, yes.
James Gray, I'm a British parliamentarian. I think I can speak for everybody here in saying this is a poorer place without you, and we wish you were here, but you're not, and thank you for joining us. Really? Secondly, I think I can speak for more or less everybody in welcoming the announcement about the icebreakers. But can you give us a little flavour as to why that decision was made, and perhaps more important than that, how they will now be deployed and used in the years to come?
Well, Senator King, you want to start? You can pick any of these questions, all of them, if you want to. Yes, please.
Well, I'm just jotting them down. Let's start with the icebreakers. I don't know the reasoning behind the president's decision, except that, and by the way, the total, I think, is 8 icebreakers, 4 to be developed, be built by Finnish yards, and 4 in the U.S. I think the principal motivation was we need to do this in a hurry. And it's a question of the industrial base and what the capacity is in terms of shipbuilding here in the United States, as well as in Finland and other countries. So I think the principal driving force was timing. And I believe that is absolutely a valid thing to be considering, because the icebreaker capacity of the U.S. is woefully inadequate, and we have to catch up. And we're developing a new large heavy icebreaker, but it's taking a long time, and it's really not a new one because it will simply replace what's now obsolete. So I think the short answer to the question on the icebreakers is time. Now I don't know what Donald Trump was thinking. You could go broke trying to figure that out, but I think it was timing probably more than anything else that will enable us to significantly upgrade the icebreaker capacity in a reasonably short period of time. I think some are projected to even be ready in a little over 2 years, 2.5 years, which is pretty fast in the shipbuilding world. The other question that I heard was about why are we just talking about Russia now? I don't. I remember being at this conference 7 or 8 years ago and talking about Russia's development and militarization of their border. They are racing in terms of their nuclear capacity, but China is what is really vastly expanding their nuclear capacity. And of course, we're in a very, very dangerous age. Nuclear weapons have, there's talk of re-upping the New START treaty, which I think would be a positive step. But we're in a pretty dangerous world right now, and what is holding the world in nuclear check is deterrence, is the deterrence theory that has basically kept the use of nuclear weapons for 75 years. So as ironic as it seems, the U.S. is also modernizing its nuclear capability in order to provide a credible deterrent so that nuclear weapons, those horrible weapons, will never be used.
Senator Murkowski.
Yes, let me add, starting first with the icebreakers as well. I, as an elected leader, gain no satisfaction in saying, I told you so. But when it comes to this partnership with Finland, I have been advocating for a partnership. The Finns have demonstrated their expertise, their global expertise when it comes to shipbuilding, and particularly icebreakers. And for years, I have been suggesting this is the perfect partnership. And we've now finally come round to it, and that's the good news. So let's get moving to the point that Senator King made about the reason why we need to move fast. You all have heard me at the Arctic Circle Assembly every year talking about our icebreaker deficit and what that means when we are an Arctic nation, and we effectively have 1.5 icebreakers and none. We have our medium strength Healy that is up there on more research mission and data collection. So we have been very, very late to the game. So the fact that we have finally committed real resources, we're talking about a $6.1 billion agreement to build out these 4 icebreakers cooperatively with Finland. This ice pact is joint with Finland, Canada, and the United States, and will allow us to be able to build up our capacity, our capability, as we will be building additional ships in Texas going forward. But it is long overdue. It is long past time. The investments have been made now, but let's move out. We've spent over 10 years and over $1 billion on our attempt to build an icebreaker, and we still have not cut steel. So I am anxious to be working with the Finns, and I was in the Helsinki shipyard just a few weeks ago looking at what they're building there for Canada with the Polar Max, and I can't wait to see this cooperation play forward. On the Russia geopolitical aspect, we have been, the individual who asked the question is absolutely right. There have been instances and evidence of this buildup of this tension with Russia for some time. We've certainly seen it play out, maybe not as apparent as some in the room are thinking about, but with sanctions on our seafoods for decades. That's its own level of conflict, if you will. What we're seeing in the Alaskan Arctic right now, with the level of not only Russian, but as Senator King mentions, Chinese engagement. We have had at least 9 different intercepts in the Alaskan 80s just this year alone, where Russian bombers have come up, and we have sent up our fighters, oftentimes in conjunction with our friends in Canada, to move them out of the skies. We have seen Russian and Chinese ships up in the Arctic on missions that are coordinated. We are paying very, very close attention, but I think the point needs to be made. We have seen an acceleration of this since Russia invaded Ukraine, in what I believe to be an effort to demonstrate that they can prosecute an illegal, awful war against the innocents in Ukraine, while at the same time demonstrating a show of Arctic strength. They want to dominate the Arctic, and so are not letting anything else push back on that message that they are the dominant player. This is why it's so important for us in the United States to not just talk about our role as an Arctic nation, but to demonstrate it not only on the national security side, but in all venues.
Chairman Grinson, I just wanted to add one quick note. There was an article in last Saturday, October 11th, Wall Street Journal, on the militarization of the Arctic, and particularly what the Russians are up to. I commend that article to your participants there as a bit of homework. I found it very illuminating, thoughtful, and full of important information. So it's a quick read, but very, as I say, very important, and I think would be worthwhile as part of the materials for the conference.
Well, I will take one more question from the hall. Yeah, here.
Hi, my name is Gray. I'm from the U.S. Hello, Senators. Thanks for joining us. Obviously, a lot is going on stateside right now. I know you all, this is sort of an opportunity and a bit of an awkward situation to be trapped in Washington, as someone else said. But I think it also gives you all an opportunity to really do some joint work. You obviously have Senator Murkowski representing the West Coast and the Republican Party, Senator King representing the East Coast and the Democratic Party. In the wake of Independent Party, excuse me. It's important to have, obviously, bipartisan effort in days like this. And I'm wondering, in the wake of so many things, whether it be the icebreaker deal, the attempted acquisition of Greenland, everything going on in the Arctic, we're talking about how many things are sort of on the plate right now. What sort of action plans do you all and, your co-eds and sort of colleagues, I should say, what should we look for moving forward? What conversations are happening in real time on the floor right now? And how do we look forward in the wake of all of this and hope to see some real change? Thank you.
Okay, since they have graciously added some more minutes to this, yes.
Hi, Olivia Eberts, freelance reporter, formerly from KYUK in Bethel. As you mentioned, Senator Murkowski, the warming waters were part of what made this typhoon in western Alaska so bad. I know that you've been a strong advocate for oil and gas in the past, but now we've seen a lot of wind projects and other renewable projects get canceled in the US. Does that make you view your past activism for oil and gas any differently, or does it make you think differently about projects you want to support going forward?
Any one of you two? Who wants to start? Yeah.
Yeah, let me start on that, and I'll begin with Olivia first on her question about some of these canceled projects. As she has noted, I have been a supporter of the resources that we have available to us in Alaska. Many are fossil oil and gas. Those provide economic opportunity. We grant that. But we also recognize that we are a state that is massive in size. And so when we're talking about how we provide for the energy needs of people in remote areas, you're not going to have a natural gas pipeline out to Kipnuk. It is not going to happen. And so what is it that we can help to facilitate to provide for more affordable, reliable, and clean energy sources? And this is where wind comes in. This is where solar comes in. This is where storage comes in. This is why it's so important that we and Republicans have talked about and all of the above energy policy for years. And now what we're seeing is it's these energy policies that the Trump administration is supportive of, which are clearly oil and gas, and literally throwing out the door anything with regards to wind and solar. This is actually something that I have fought the administration on. We made a little bit of headway in ensuring that the plug was not going to be completely pulled on wind and solar projects that were already in process. We were able to include that in that reconciliation bill. And then we saw the administration do literally an end run through regulations out of Treasury as well as a secretarial order. So I am not done fighting the administration on this, because we need to have these energy sources. We need to have renewable, we need to have storage, we need to have our fossil, but we need to do it all in a way that respects the environmental stewardship that we all owe. As far as Gray's comment about bipartisanship, and I think that this is actually a good way to end this panel, because I am beaming into you with my friend, Angus King is my friend. He's my colleague. He's my bookend. He's got the East. I've got the West. But I really look to him as a problem solver, and I believe he feels the same about me. There are good men and women here who are working together to try to get us out of this mess. There are some who are looking at the present shutdown and feeling like they are, quote, winning. There is no side that is winning. Republicans are not winning. Democrats are not winning. The country is losing when we cannot demonstrate a level of professionalism, a level of competence, a level of cooperation. And so for the good of the country, we've got to get our act together. And I think it's going to be good people like Angus, but it's going to be working across the aisle in order to make it happen. That's how we're going to get out of this, not waiting for the other side to just fold. So we got some work to do, but it's a commitment I have made every single day. And I know there are others that are equally committed.
So while we thank you for taking the time to be with us live on.
Can I comment on those questions?
Yes, but I was going to ask one question at the end, so please be quick. So.
Well, I'll be brief, but first I want to thank my colleague and friend Lisa for her nice comments. And there are people here who are trying to work together, but we are in an unprecedented time of intense partisanship. And it's debilitating. It's harming our country. It's harming our ability to respond to problems. And the only thing we can do is to continue to try to talk to one another and listen to one another, which is in short supply these days. I can tell you that I'm continually meeting with small groups of people. And I should mention, by the way, that in foreign policy, there's much less partisanship. I was at a meeting yesterday afternoon with one of the top officials in Ukraine with a group of senators, and I think it was 5 or 6 Republicans and 4 or 5 Democrats and me. I mean, it was a truly bipartisan meeting. There was no dissent. There was no bitterness. There was no, we don't want to talk to you. It was, the old saying is partisanship stops at the water's edge. And to a large extent, that's still the case. And it's certainly the case in the United States Senate. Let me talk about renewables for a second. For years, people have been saying all of the above. The policy of this administration is all of the below. That is below the surface of the earth. The cuts that have been made recently to renewable projects are short-sighted and really problematic because we need a lot of power fast. The estimates for demand increase in the United States is 2% a year. If you do the math of that compounded, that's 30% more power we'll need in the next 10 years, which is extraordinary. And the quickest and the cheapest forms of power are solar and wind. Storage is also a part of it. And this idea that solar and wind are undependable because it gets dark at night. Yeah, everybody knows that. You can do storage. That's when you can use natural gas as a backup. And you have a cheaper, much more readily available energy sources. And I'm just afraid this administration, not necessarily in the Congress, but this administration is so oriented toward oil and gas. I mean, they're just, they cut over 100 projects just a few weeks ago, energy projects. 97% of them were in Democratic congressional districts. Now that strikes me as something that could not be a coincidence. So this is being used as an ideological and a partisan weapon, which is not serving the needs of the United States. The truth is, we do need an all-the-above policy, but to try to strangle renewables at this moment of accelerating climate change, and the Arctic Ocean is Exhibit A. The diminution of the Arctic ice in the last 35 years has been the most dramatic example of what's happening on the planet anywhere. And to ignore that and pretend that it's not real is to doom our children and our grandchildren to a much different and less amenable world than the one we've grown up in. So I'm not happy at all with the direction that we're going in. If they really mean all the above, they shouldn't be just cutting wind and solar projects. And if they really want energy fast, wind and solar is the shortest time frame and also the least expensive.
So our time is out, and we are really grateful for you for making the time. But since the audience is so polite that they are not asking the question I'm going to put to you, but because I'm getting the message that time is already out, you can just answer with one sentence if you want to. We are all familiar with the statements by President Trump with respect to Greenland. So my question is this: you think this is just talk, or you think he's going to act on it?
Talk.
I think that he wants to act on it more from a national security perspective and with a focus to the partnership that the United States and Greenland have had up at Pitavik Airspace Station. As those conversations continue cooperatively between the people of Greenland, the Kingdom of Denmark, I think that that is important. But I think that he should always, and his administration should always view these conversations through the lens of the Greenlanders, and I hear it often, nothing about us without us. And so making sure that there is that level of cooperation and respect for the autonomy of the people of Greenland, that's what matters going forward.
So just following this session, we will have the 3 ministers from the government of Greenland on the stage. So I think this is a proper note to end. Again, we are deeply grateful to the both of you for finding the time in Washington to be with us through this technological means. We invite both of you to be at the Assembly next year, but we are very honored to have not only your partnership, but also your wisdom and your views shared by this audience here. So let us thank the senators for their great engagement, and thank you very much indeed.